शारदचन्द्रसुन्दरमुखम् ताम्रारविन्देक्षणम् भक्ताभीष्टवराभयप्रदकरम् कौपीनमात्रोज्ज्वलम् स्वात्मानन्दरसानुभूतिविवशम् सर्वानवद्याङ्गकम् श्रीमन्तं श्रीरमणीश्वरं गुरुवरं योगासनाध्यासितं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहमहमिति साक्षादात्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वतामच्युतव पवनचलनरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्. Namo Ramana. On this Friday Atma Vicharam, we commence the Atma Vicharam by listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham, and we have been reading his Upadesham from the book Ramana Answers, Self-Enquiry 1900 to 1950, a compilation of all the answers given by Bhagavan on the subject of Atma Vichara, self-enquiry, between 1900 to 1950. And this wonderful compilation is done by our founder president, Sri A.R. Natarajanji. In this section, we have been looking at the question answers put to Bhagavan between 1936 to 1950. And after meditating on the question and answers given for the day, we will have a 20 minutes Atma Vichara session, a practical Atma Vichara session. Following that, our President Sharda Akka would be talking about Atma Vichara as it has been contemplated in Ganapati Muni's Ramana Gita. And finally, we will have the concluding prayers to Bhagavan. We have reached the 63rd question last week. The 64th and the 65th is all continuation of the same question. So we will read 63rd and continue to meditate on it by Bhagavan's grace. A devotee asked Bhagavan, how shall I find out who am I? Question is, how shall I find out who am I? Which Bhagavan had answered, are there two selves, for the one self to find the other? To which the devotee asked, the self must be only one, consisting of two aspects, of I and the will of a thinker and thought. How is one to realize the I? Should who am I be mentally repeated? Maharshi said, no such limitation is meant. To which the devotee asked, am I to think who am I? Bhagavan said, you have to know where from The I thought springs forth. Hold the I, hold the I thought, and find its source. Then the devotee asked, may I know the way? Bhagavan said, do you do as you have now been told and see? Devotee, I do not understand what should I do? Maharshi, if it is anything objective, the way can be shown objectively. This is subjective. Devotee, please tell me the way. Maharshi, is it necessary to show the way in the interior of your own home, that is within you? We will look at this question and answers and meditate before we do a 20 minutes Atma Vichara. In the last week, when the devotee asked the question to Bhagavan, how shall I find out who am I? Then Bhagavan had very clearly put a counter question, an inquiry, to see whether there are two selves, one to find out the other. And the devotee's next question very clearly brings out, as sadhakas that we are, but somehow, even though we feel that there are no two selves or no two eyes within me, but there seems to be a clear demarcation, and the devotee is bringing that forth here, is asking, I feel that the self consists of two aspects. One of the I, which he refers to as the pure self, and the other as the thinker and the thought, who has the will of thinking, excuse me, who has the will of thinking and the thoughts. So his question is that he is the thinker and the thought. So how do I go about realizing the I, the pure self? So, because I am the thinker and the thought, should I go on repeating the question, who am I mentally? To which Bhagavan says, no such repetition is meant. Then, if I am not to repeat it as a mantra, am I to think who am I? Is the next question. Bhagavan says, you have to know where from the I thought springs forth. Hold the I thought and find its source. So the answer which is given by Bhagavan here is to hold the I thought wherever it springs forth from and get back to the source. The devotee asks, may I know the way? Bhagavan says, do as you have been told and see. Then the devotee says, I do not understand what I should do. Bhagavan says, if it is anything objective, the way can be shown objectively. This is subjective. This is not an objective thing which can be shown. It is something one has to realize. Therefore, the enquiry. Then the devotee says, please tell me the way. Bhagavan says, is it necessary to show the way in the interior of your own home? This is within you. Now, whenever we look at from the devotee's perspective here, we see that, yeah, there is something which is very still, and there is something which is thinking, and the thoughts are coming and going constantly. And therefore, the thinker and the thought is the ego or the limited entity, and there is something, an I, which is stable, and these are two aspects of the self, and that's how we generally feel ourselves. So there is that division, that I as the one who is therefore because I have a very clear identification this as an object, as this name and form, as Dileep. Therefore, what is easy for me to do with this body is repeat something or think very easily. So these are things that I feel I am very effortlessly possible for me. And therefore, the devotee is asking here the question, should I go on asking, who am I? Or should I go on thinking, who am I? To which Bhagavan says, no, hold the I and find its source. Now, this I, what is it that Bhagavan is referring to? That is the challenge. It is not something, though it looks objective, it is not very clear for most of the time, or it becomes very forgetful for us what it is. Bhagavan and goes on to say that this is the I am the body idea or the chit jada granthi that we saw last week too. That the in the 24th verse of Ulladunarpadu, Bhagavan says very clearly, the body does not say I. Neither does the awareness rise or set saying I. In between these two, in between this awareness and this gross body, which doesn't say anything, there rises an entity which takes the qualities of the awareness on one side and limits it to this body on the other side, and that entity, or to be more clearly, that concept within us that I am this body is the one which we use Bhagavan refers to as the ego or the jiva. That is the individual. And Bhagavan wants us to see where from that rises. The reason is, if it is a concept that has arisen from me, who is free of it, the pure consciousness, then by attending to that concept, I am, what am I doing? If we just sit here and inquire, if I attend to that idea, I am this body, what am I doing? Because I am Satchidananda, because I am existence, consciousness, bliss, moment I attend to that concept, I am lending my Sat, that is my existence, to that thought, that concept also. Therefore, that concept appears very real. It is very rock solid. In fact, it appears so rock solid for us that we want to get rid of it. It is real and we want to get rid of it. Isn't it what we try to do repeatedly in our sadhana? So that is what we do by attending to it. Therefore, the Sat aspect of ours, whatever it falls upon through the Chit, which is the awareness, it appears very real. And moment it appears real, there is the division created. I, the subject, and that the object, which is the in this situation, I am the body idea. The object is very real, and therefore I should do something to get rid of it. And now this if you see, maybe if you see it with an example, if there is a mirage and technically there is no water in there, but the air or the environment creates as though there is a water that is flowing in there. Now, there are two aspects. When I don't know the idea that there is a mirage or a possibility of a mirage, I may walk and I may, if I am thirsty, I may walk a long way towards the mirage to see whether it can quench my thirst. Like in our case, we can see I am not happy and I am looking for happiness, and therefore, this I am the body idea, which appears like a mirage, seems to have many, many wonderful things for it to see, listen, and so I go through it. I go towards this mirage. I work through the mirage to see if it can quench my thirst for happiness. And as we go more closer to the mirage, we figure out that it is not real and it is still further away and still lit and it doesn't really quench our thirst. Likewise, when the sadhaka that we are realizes this concept, I am the body, is not going to quench my search for happiness, because here there is divisions. I have the very first division that has been created by my attending to this idea itself is the first division, and then thereupon there are innumerous divisions that I create, and I am lost in this maze of many objective things, and therefore the subject that I am, the source of happiness, Sat Chit, the Ananda Swarupa of me is gone when I lend my Sat and Chit to this concept and I go towards it. I lose my Ananda in that. This is why Bhagavan doesn't ask us to find us anything objectively. Therefore, he is asking to the question. Questioner is saying, do as you have been told and see to yourself. And further, he goes on to say, when the questioner says, I do not understand, what should I do? Bhagavan goes on to say, if it is anything objective, the way can be shown objectively. This is subjective. Your look out for Ananda through this lending of Sat Chit to this concept, which is very much an imaginary concept, and trying to find Ananda through that is basically like trying to quench your thirst through the mirage. And Bhagavan is going on to say that objective approach is not going to give anything. Therefore, it is very subjective. Turn inward and get back to whom this I thought or this concept is for, where from it springs. Hold on to it, find its source, and then the Jiva Bhava, that is the I am the body, if we become free of that concept, that itself becomes the Jivan Mukti. It becomes free of that concept here and now. And therefore, Bhagavan asks us from going outward and attending to this Jiva Bhava, which we do in the form of every rising thought, because the I thought itself is this foremost concept which limits the awareness to the body. That is what is the I thought. And further, every other thought is for that idea, to that I only. And therefore, Bhagavan says, every rising thought only is taking us more and more objectively, whereas the happiness that we are looking for is subjective, which is our natural state or naturalness of ours, the happiness. And therefore, he asks us to inquire to whom is this thought and recognize that it is for me, and thereupon inquire who am I and get back to the source that we verily are. With repeated practice, no matter what kind of thoughts we may have, good, bad, ugly, spiritual, it is all for the I, the first and the foremost division. And by repeatedly inquiring, who am I? Getting back to the source, to the subject, Bhagavan says, here and now we experience the fullness or the one truth which alone is, and get rid of all the imaginary objective ideas. The immense grace of Bhagavan, with which alone we have come to this most direct path. For the next 20 minutes, let us do Atma Vichara. Namo Bhagavate Shri More Ramana, over to Shardarka.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as the self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self, manifest as Ramana, we have been meditating on self-enquiry, followed by the practice of self-enquiry. And in this part of the satsang, we will continue the meditation by dwelling on the verses of Ramana Gita, which has been recorded in Sanskrit, which is questions to Bhagavan and answers by him, recorded in Sanskrit by Ganapati Muni and compiled as 18 chapters. We are now meditating on the 7th chapter, which is directly on self-enquiry. Earlier chapters, first chapter, we were told about the importance of experience, the importance of self-abidance, and not of mere mental understanding. The second chapter, we were given the Ekashloki of Bhagavan, Hridaya Kuhara Madhye Kevalam Brahma Matram. Yaha Mahamiti Sakshat Atma Rupena Bhati. The self is shining, it is ever shining. The alone is shining, Kevalam. And nothing is there for us to do except to get back to the heart, Hridivisha. So that was the injunction from Bhagavan. And in the third chapter, Daivarata asks Bhagavan, what is the most important duty? And Bhagavan had reiterated that the most important duty is to abide in the self. To abide in the self alone is the most important duty. Then again, the questions were put to Bhagavan about the Mahavakyas. Because abiding in the self alone is important, then what about the various Mahavakyas? What is their role in practice? And Bhagavan said, yes, it's fine, but again, one has to abide in the self. It is good to meditate, but self-abidance alone is the answer. Abidance in one's pure state is knowledge, according to the wise, said Bhagavan to us. And further, in the 5th chapter, what happened? Bhagavan himself told us about the signs of the heart. Having said that self-abidance alone is important, having given the key to it in his Ekashloki, Atmanishto Bhavatvam, Bhagavan explicitly, out of his own pure grace, even without being asked any question about it, explained the details about the Hridaya Vidya, the science of the heart. Bhagavan repeatedly says, get back to the source. What is this source? This source is the Hridayam. So get back to it. What is its nature? How does one get back to it? Why is it all powerful? Bhagavan explained all this to us in the 5th chapter. And in the 6th chapter, continuing again of his own accord, Bhagavan also explained the ways of mind control. How to control the mind? Because what is it that separates us from the heart? Bhagavan explained in the chapter on Hridaya Vidya that the mind rises from the heart and gives rise then thereafter to the illusion of separateness. So, the path is to get back, to retrace the steps. But Bhagavan had told also in the chapter on Hridaya Vidya that when the mind begins to move outwards, when the Atma Shakti begins to move outwards through the mind and pervades the body, one becomes a samsari, samsari manujo bhavet. One becomes a samsari, one becomes engrossed in the world, in the objects. Therefore, there is need for mind control. There is need to pull back the mind from the objects and bring it back into the self. So, Bhagavan spoke about the control of the mind. And here, now in the 7th chapter, Karshni questioned Bhagavan about the nature of self-enquiry, which Bhagavan has said is the direct path back to the self. So, what is this self-enquiry? Bhagavan said, tracing the I thought back to the source is self-enquiry. Then Kashni has gone on to ask, what is the qualification for self-enquiry? What should I be prepared with? What is the gear I should wear? Or what is the place I should sit in? Bhagavan says the qualification is indifference to worldly objects, indifference to the body. That is the qualification for self-enquiry. Because once one knows that the body is not I, then would there be real love for the body and anything that is associated with the body? When I know that this is not the truth, if we know that somebody is cheating on us, can we love that person thereafter? If we feel that we are being cheated by the concept that the body is I, how can there be love for it thereafter? But our predicament is something strange. It is like, on the one hand, we accept the truth that the body is not I. If we did not accept this truth, we would never ask ourselves the question, who am I? So we accept the truth that the body is not I. At the same time, we also hold on to the body idea. So there is a need for corroding this, eroding this, working away on this body idea, which is so strong that even though we feel, yes, the body is not I, again and again, the body rises as the body thought, and the body then rises as associated thoughts. The body itself, of course, is insentient, Bhagavan has told us. So, what is this body? The body is only I am the body idea. That rises time and again. There is need for sadhana to repeat, to strengthen the initial disregard for the body. So because it will come in waves. The nature of the mind is that it goes up and down. It keeps going up and down. It fluctuates. It is in a good mood one day, it's in a bad mood the other day. It's in a good mood one moment, it's in a bad mood the other moment. It will be angry and afterwards it will be pacified. It will be peaceful and then afterwards it will become angry. It keeps going up and down. One moment it will trust the body. Next moment it will say body is not to be trusted. Third moment again it will end up trusting the body. So it goes up and down. It is not the nature of the mind to be steady, to hold on to one thing regardless of all other things, to keep to its resolve. That's why Bhagavan says in Aksharamanamale தீரமில்லகத்தில் தேடி உந்தனை யான் திரும்ப உற்றேன். I searched for you within myself, but I searched for you without sufficient courage. Therefore, I have returned, I have come back. I did not conclude my search. Tirumba uttren. So please bless me. Please shower your grace on me so that I may have the courage to turn within and keep within until the answer is revealed. See, within a few seconds, we want to hold on to one thing or the other, as Dileep was saying in the question answer session, the section which he read out today and meditated upon it. The devotee is told, Bhagavan says, go back to the source. And the devotee then asks, what is the way to do it? Bhagavan again says out of compassion, it is not something objective that can be explained. Try. Just try. Actually, every effort is only a trial. When a child stands up for the first time, the child is just doing something very instinctive and natural. The child is not thinking that after standing, I will take one step and then I will take those steps holding to some object. Then after I hold those objects and keep moving, then I will leave the objects and take steps on my own. It is a leap of faith, actually. Every moment in the growth of the child is a leap of faith. One of the devotees, he was sharing with me, he said, when I was a young child, maybe I was 4 or 5 or even less, I found in my village that my father was inside the big well where they do their swimming and all that. So in that big, huge village well, my father was inside and I was outside, and I asked him, shall I jump in? He said, jump, I will catch you. And I jumped in. And then I went into the water and I learned how to swim as well. The next time, after I was a little grown up, my father was not inside the well. I knew swimming already. The first time when I jumped in, I did not know swimming. I did not know anything except that my father was there and he would catch hold of me. But the next time I was grown up, and though I knew swimming, it struck me that the well is deep. And if I jump in, I may drown. All these thoughts came to me. So the intellect rises in us despite our longing to get back to the self. Something unconsciously or consciously keeps rising and making us take hold of the body identity. So Bhagavan says there must be indifference to the body and there must be indifference to all worldly objects. If the mind is to remain in sustained enquiry, it has to be indifferent to all else. This may happen to us in phases where we undergo some difficulty, when life is not very easy. Therefore, in the Puranas and other teachings also, we hear examples of people, especially there is a famous example of Kunti, who is said to have asked Sri Krishna, give me only sorrow and that will ensure that I think of you all the time. So when there is sorrow, the mind will be indifferent. But the real test is to be indifferent even though there is no sorrow. Even though life may seem to be pleasant, we have to recognize that it is only an illusion. Therefore, the truth must be known. I need to know my own true nature. Now, having said this also, the devotee continues to ask, supposing I am indifferent, supposing I or any one person, there is a sadhaka who is not interested in worldly objects, who is absolutely indifferent to the world and to the body. Should such a one engage in activities such as snanam, sandhya, japa, homa, etc., all the purificatory activities, normally purificatory activities, good activities, should one engage in them at all, or would they be a waste of time? So Bhagavan says, no, they are all good for one who has just begun to feel a sense of detachment. Because the great ones do not advocate the dropping of anything that has come to us through our, either it may have come to us through tradition, through the family tradition, or we may have by God's divine plan started off on a particular journey, a spiritual journey, maybe in japa or maybe in any other sadhana. So Bhagavan does not advocate the dropping of that. Nochur Venkatraman Nochuranna, he says to us that while telling the story of Shiva Prakasham Pillai, he said, Bhagavan told him, do not stop the custom of wearing sacred ash, of having your tuft. Do not drop all these customs or traditions, because the need to break away, the need to drop any of these customary observances, why should such a need arise? If one is truly indifferent to everything that is happening to the body, will one choose not to do sandhya? Will one choose not to have a bath? Will one choose not to do japa? One will not choose anything. One will do what is enjoined or what is told by the elders or by the scriptures or by one's own practice. One would continue to engage in whatever activities one has to engage in. Even Bhagavan, for the 6 weeks he stayed in Madurai after his enlightenment, was in a state of complete indifference to all external things. But on that account, he did not stop going to school. He did not stop having his food. He did whatever activities he was engaged in earlier also. He continued to do those activities, but with complete indifference towards all that, until Arunachaleshwara told him, now you need not do it anymore. So Bhagavan says here that if it is that we have just begun to have a sense of detachment, one should not make a choice. Oh, now I am completely detached. I do not anymore need to do puja. I do not anymore need to have a ritual bath. I do not anymore need to go to the temple. No, arambinam kshiyamana raganam adhikarinam karmanyetani sarvani bhuyasya chitta shuddhaye, says Bhagavan. All these actions will help to purify the mind. So continue to do those which are purificatory actions, because if one gives up those actions, one may end up doing something totally unwarranted in that time. So Bhagavan further explains that these activities, these good activities, prevent a person from engaging in something negative during that time. So they are all good. But one may not feel that this is necessary always. How come even a jnani engages in these activities? one who must be completely indifferent to the body, what good will come to him? Bhagavan says, Kshiyamana Raganam, when the Arambhinam Kshiyamana Raganam Adhikarina, the Arambhinam Adhikari, the one who is a beginner should continue. What about one who is already established in that state, well established in that state? That question is not asked, but it is answered by Bhagavan when he says that one who is already in that state takes up these activities because of compassion for the world. All activities are taken up by the jnani out of pure compassion for the world. That's what we see the entire life of Bhagavan. Bhagavan being in the kitchen, cutting vegetables along with the kitchen workers, working along with them, going to the Goshala or reading the proof, looking into even the puja, looking into the construction of the mother's temple, visiting a mason in Skandashram, even though he had a collarbone that was fractured. Bhagavan walked all the way up to Skandashram because the mason there had a desire, will not Bhagavan come and see my work? So all these activities are undertaken by the Jivan Mukta, by the Sahajanishtha, out of pure compassion for the welfare of the world, says Bhagavan. But if such a one does not engage in any activities which are enjoined by the scriptures, which are prescribed by the scriptures, no fault will ensue, no bad, no harm will come to that one, because Bhagavan says one who is abiding the self is all the time performing the purest of actions. The purest of actions. So no impurity can touch such a one. Whereas if one is a beginner, then there may be wavering, there may be a negative direction ensuing from wrong choices. There may be an egoistic thrust towards dropping something or holding something. Whereas in one who is permanently abiding in the self, if they take up activities, it is out of compassion. And if they do not take up activities, it will not disturb them. And even those activities which they take up, says Bhagavan, they do not disturb their enquiry or their abidance. They may perform any activity, but that does not disturb their enquiry in any way. Bhagavan also has described it as automatic divine action. The action just will happen automatically. If you remain in the state in which you have to be, in your own true state, everything that needs to be done through you will be done automatically, says Bhagavan. So here also Bhagavan says that these activities may be taken up, surely taken up by the beginner, and taken as supports in the sadhana. And once the need for them has dropped, then they may continue automatically out of compassion, and they will not in any way disturb the self-enquiry or the abidance, says Bhagavan here in answer to Kashni's questions. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
अपार सच्चित् सुखवारिराशि यस्योर्मिमात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरं चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. Thank you.